The courtroom stretched like a massive cathedral, its walls carved from black stone that seemed to swallow light. Hundreds of beings from across the galaxy filled the viewing sections. Some had scales that glittered under the artificial suns, hanging from the ceiling. Others had fur or skin in colors that humans had no names for. All of them had come to watch the trial of the century. Hannah Kim sat in the front row, her hands folded tightly in her lap. She wore the dark blue uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps, but today it felt more like a funeral dress. Her black hair was pulled back in a perfect bun, not a strand out of place. She had learned long ago that showing weakness in front of aliens could mean death for her people back home, but inside, her heart was breaking. 20 feet away, behind a barrier of pure energy, sat her son, Dae-yoon. The young man looked so small in the defendant's cage. At 25, he still had the soft face that reminded Hannah of the little boy who used to chase butterflies in their garden. Now his hands were bound with energy shackles that glowed blue against his skin. Dae-yeon's crime, according to the Galactic Empire, was terrible beyond words. They said he had created a biological weapon. They said he had released it on Nexus Station, a trading post where thousands of different species lived and worked together. They said 47 innocent beings had died because of what he did. Hannah knew it was all lies. The judge was a creature called a Vorthok. It stood 12 feet tall on 4 legs that ended in claws. Its head looked like a cross between a lizard and a bird, with yellow eyes that never seemed to blink. When it spoke, its voice came out as a series of clicks and hisses that the translation machines turned into cold, emotionless words. The defendant will stand for sentencing. The judge announced. Dae-yeon rose slowly to his feet. He had lost weight during the 3 months of his trial. His brown skin had gone pale from being kept in the underground cells beneath the courthouse, but his eyes still held that gentle look that had made him want to become a scientist in the first place. He had always believed that knowledge could make the galaxy a better place. The prosecutor stepped forward. Vextel was also a Vorthok, but smaller than the judge. He wore robes that marked him as one of the Empire's top legal minds. During the trial, he had spoken about Dae-yoon like he was a monster. He had called humans a dangerous species and said they could not be trusted with advanced science. Your Honor, Vextel began, his translated voice dripping with satisfaction. The evidence is clear. The defendant, Dae-yeon Kim, created a weapon of mass destruction. He tested it on innocent civilians. He showed no mercy and no remorse. The Empire demands justice for those who died. Hannah wanted to scream. She wanted to jump over the barrier and shake the judge until he listened to reason. The evidence was not clear at all. It was manufactured, twisted, and incomplete. But the Empire's courts did not care about truth. They cared about making an example. The defense attorney was a Zephyrian named Kelter. His people looked almost human except for their blue skin and silver hair. He had tried his best, but he was fighting against centuries of anti-human prejudice. The Empire had never forgiven humanity for refusing to bow down when they first made contact 50 years ago. Your Honor, Kelter said, his voice shaking slightly, my client is a scientist, not a warrior. He has spent his life studying alien plant life to help create medicines. The prosecution has provided no direct evidence that he created or deployed any weapon. This trial is based on fear, not facts. The judge's yellow eyes turned to Kelter with something that might have been amusement. The court has reviewed all evidence. The human's presence at Nexus Station at the time of the attack cannot be denied. His knowledge of biological systems cannot be questioned. His species' history of violence speaks for itself. Hannah felt her diplomatic training slipping away like water through her fingers. She had spent 15 years learning how to speak to aliens without causing incidents. She had studied their cultures, their laws, their ways of thinking. She had believed that patience and understanding could bridge any gap between species. Now she realized how naive she had been. Does the defendant wish to make a final statement? The judge asked. Dae-yoon looked up at the towering creature that held his life in its claws. When he spoke, his voice was clear and strong despite everything they had done to him. I did not create any weapon, he said simply. I did not kill anyone. I was on Nexus Station to collect samples of Andromedon moss for medical research. If I am guilty of anything, it is believing that science could bring our peoples together instead of driving them apart. The judge made a sound that the translators could not convert into human speech. It might have been laughter, or it might have been something much worse. The court finds the defendant guilty of all charges. The judge announced, Dae-yeon Kim, you are sentenced to life imprisonment on the penal world of Korvac 7. You will never again see your home world. You will never again practice science. You will spend your remaining days thinking about the lives you destroyed. The courtroom erupted in sounds from dozens of different species. Some were cheering, others were making the alien equivalent of gasps. But Hannah heard none of it. The world had gone silent around her. She watched as the guards activated Dae-yeon's restraints and began to lead him away. For just a moment, her son turned back to look at her. Their eyes met across the courtroom, and she saw something there. That made her heart stop. He was not afraid. He was not angry. He was apologizing to her, as if this was somehow his fault. That was when something inside Hannah Kim broke forever. She stood up slowly, her movements controlled and precise. Around her, the various aliens were beginning to file out of the courtroom, already forgetting about the human they had just condemned. But Hannah was not forgotten. She could feel eyes on her from the shadows at the back of the room. In the last row, almost hidden behind a pillar, sat a figure that most beings would have ignored. He looked like just another human trader or businessman. His clothes were plain, his face was ordinary, and he seemed to be sleeping. But Hannah knew better. She knew that Kalthos, the Zephyrian crime lord who had orchestrated this entire frame job, was watching her. He wanted to see her break. He wanted to see her despair. Instead, Hannah Kim, ambassador of Earth to the Galactic Council, turned and walked out of the courtroom with her head held high. Her steps were steady, her breathing was controlled, and her face showed nothing but diplomatic.com. But behind her eyes, a plan was already forming. The Empire thought they had one. They thought they had sent a message about what happened to humans who stepped out of line. They had no idea what message they were about to receive in return. As Hannah reached the doors of the courthouse, she made a decision that would change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. She was done being a diplomat. It was time to be a sister. The transport ship touched down on Earth's landing pad with barely a whisper. Hannah Kim walked down the ramp into the familiar air of her homeworld, but nothing felt the same anymore. The sky was still blue. The air still smelled of rain and growing things, but she saw it all through different eyes now. 3 days had passed since the trial. 3 days since she watched her son disappear into the Empire's prison system. 3 days since she realized that 15 years of diplomatic work meant nothing when faced with alien hatred. Soul spread out before her like a jewel of glass and steel. The city had grown during her years away, reaching toward the sky with buildings that seemed to touch the clouds. Humans moved through the streets below, going about their daily lives. They had no idea that one of their own was sitting in a cage on a planet they could not even pronounce. Hannah took a taxi through the city center, past the monuments and museums that celebrated humanity's journey to the stars. The irony was not lost on her. They had reached for the stars only to discover that the darkness between them was full of creatures who wanted to keep them in chains. But taxi stopped in front of an old apartment building in the Gangnam district. It was the kind of place that had been elegant 50 years ago but now looked tired and forgotten. Most of the windows were dark, and weeds grew through cracks in the sidewalk. Hannah paid the driver and walked to the entrance. She pressed the button for apartment for B and waited. No answer came through the speaker, but after a moment, the door clicked open. She climbed the stairs slowly, her diplomatic training making her check each corner in shadow. The hallway on the 4th floor was empty, except for old newspapers and the smell of cooking food from behind closed doors. At the end of the hall, one door stood slightly open. Hannah pushed it wider and stepped inside. The apartment was small and neat, with furniture that looked like it had been chosen for function rather than beauty. Books filled shelves along every wall, most of them in languages she did not recognize. A single lamp provided the only light, casting long shadows across the room. In a chair by the window sat a man who looked enough like Hannah to be her brother, which he was, though they had not spoken in over 10 years. Jinwoo Kim was 5 years older than Hannah, but he looked like he had aged much more than that. His black hair was touched with gray at the temples, and lines around his eyes spoke of too many sleepless nights. He was reading a book written in what looked like Vorthok script. He did not look up when she entered. "Hello, sister," Jinwoo said in Korean, his voice as calm as if she had seen him yesterday. "I was wondering when you would come." Hannah closed the door behind her and studied the man she had once known better than anyone in the universe. Jinwoo had always been quiet, even as a child, but there had been a time when his silence came from shyness, not from the weight of secrets. "You know why I am here," she said, also speaking in their native language. "Your son." Jinwoo closed the book and set it aside. When he looked at her, his eyes were darker than she remembered. "I watched the trial on the news feeds. They did not even try to make it look fair." Hannah sat down in the chair across from him. The apartment was so quiet she could hear her own heartbeat. "He is innocent, Jinwoo. They framed him." "I know." Jinwoo reached for a glass of water on the table beside him. His movements were careful and controlled, like someone who had learned that sudden motions could mean death. "The question is what you want me to do about it." "I want my son back." "That is not what I do anymore. Hannah, I told you that the last time we spoke." The last time they had spoken was at their mother's funeral. Jinwoo had appeared like a ghost, stayed for the ceremony, then vanished again before the burial dinner. Hannah had tried to contact him afterward, but he had changed all his numbers and moved without leaving an address. "This is different," Hannah said. "This is family." Jinwoo laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. "Family? Do you remember what you said to me the last time I tried to help our family? You said I was a monster. You said the things I did made me no better than the criminals I hunted." Hannah felt heat rise in her cheeks. "That was different. You were working for people who did not care about justice. You were killing for money. And now you want me to kill. For love, is that supposed to be better? I want you to save an innocent man. Jinwoo stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the city lights were beginning to come on as evening fell. For a long moment, he just stood there, watching the world below. Tell me what you know, he said finally. Hannah pulled a datapad from her bag and handed it to him. Everything is on there, the real timeline of events, the evidence they refused to allow in court, the connections between the prosecutor and certain criminal organizations. Jinwoo took the pad and scrolled through the information. His expression did not change as he read, but Hannah could see his jaw getting tighter with each page. Kelthos, he said after several minutes. I should have known. That creature has been trying to start a war between humans and the Empire for years. Your son just gave him the perfect opportunity. Can you prove it? Proof is not the problem. Getting anyone to listen to the proof is the problem. The Empire has already made up its mind about humans. They want us to be the villains in their story. Jinwoo set the pad down and turned back to face his sister. In the lamplight, his face looked older than his 43 years. There were scars along his jawline that had not been there when they were children, and his hands moved with the unconscious awareness of someone who had spent years expecting attack. If I do this, he said slowly, it will not be clean, it will not be diplomatic, and it will not be quiet. The whole galaxy will know that someone made humans angry enough to send their worst nightmare after them. I do not care about clean, Hannah said. I do not care about diplomatic, and I certainly do not care about quiet. I care about my son. Jinwoo walked to a closet and opened it. Inside, Hannah could see clothes, equipment, and weapons that she did not recognize. Some of them looked human. Others definitely did not. You need to understand something, sister. The man you knew, your little brother who used to build model airplanes and dream about becoming an astronaut, that man is gone. The person standing here now has done things that would give you nightmares. I have killed beings whose names you cannot pronounce for reasons you would not understand. He pulled out a long black case and set it on the table between them. But I have never killed anyone who did not deserve it. And I have never abandoned family, no matter how much they disappointed me. Hannah looked at the case and felt something cold settle in her stomach. She had come here asking for help, but she was beginning to understand the true price of what she wanted. How long will it take? She asked. That depends on how careful I need to be. If you want your son back alive, and you want to avoid starting an interstellar war, it might take months. If you just want justice, I want both. Jinwoo smiled for the first time since she had arrived. It was not a pleasant expression. Then we do this right. And when we are done, every alien in the galaxy will know that humans protect their own, no matter what it costs. He opened the case and began checking the contents. Hannah did not look too closely at what was inside. Outside the window, night fell over Seoul like a curtain. Somewhere, in the darkness between the stars, her son was learning what it meant to be alone in an alien prison. But he would not be alone much longer. The hunt was about to begin. Terminus Station floated in the void between three solar systems, a massive wheel of metal and lights that never slept. It was the kind of place where honest beings feared to go, and criminals called home. Traitors, smugglers, assassins, and worse, gathered here to do business that no civilized world would allow. Jinwoo Kim walked through the station's lower levels like he belonged there. He wore the plain clothes of a freight hauler, his face carefully arranged to look bored and tired. But his eyes missed nothing. Every exit, every weapon, every face that turned his way was catalogued and filed away in his mind. 3 weeks had passed since his conversation with Hannah. 3 weeks of preparation, research, and planning. Now it was time to begin hunting the truth about his nephew's frame job. The bar called the Broken Chain sat in the deepest part of the station, where the artificial gravity was weakest and the air recyclers worked hardest. It was the kind of establishment that served drinks strong enough to kill most species and asked no questions about its customers' business. Jinwoo found the person he was looking for at a corner table, nursing a glass of something that glowed blue in the dim light. Minji Park looked older than her 35 years, with scars on her hands and a careful way of sitting that kept her back to the wall. She had been beautiful once, before the galaxy taught her that beauty was just another weapon that could be turned against you. Hello, Minji, Jinwoo said, sliding into the seat across from her. She did not look surprised to see him. I wondered how long it would take you to show up. Heard about your nephew on the news feeds. That was a dirty piece of work, even for the Empire. You know it was a setup. Everyone with half a brain knows it was a setup. The question is whether anyone cares enough to do something about it. Minji took a sip of her drink and studied Jinwoo's face. Guess I have my answer. Minji had been one of Earth's best intelligence operatives before she burned out and went freelance. Now she ran an information brokerage that served clients from across the galaxy. If there was a secret worth knowing in this part of space, Minji either knew it or could find out who did. What can you tell me about Kalthos? Jinwoo asked. Plenty, if you have the credits to pay for it. Nothing, if you are planning to do something stupid that will bring the Empire down on all our heads. Jinwoo placed a credit chip on the table between them. The amount displayed made Mingy's eyebrows rise slightly. "That is for information only," she said. "If you want me to help you kill him, the price goes up considerably. Information first. We will discuss other services later." Mingy pocketed the chip and leaned forward. "Kalthos runs the largest criminal organization in this sector. Drugs, weapons, slaves, information, murder for hire. If it is illegal and profitable, he has his claws in it. How does that connect to framing my nephew? The bioweapon that killed those people on Nexus Station, it was not made by humans. It was created in a Zephyrian military lab about 6 months ago. The lab was supposedly destroyed in an accident, but I have sources that say some samples went missing right before the explosion." Jinwoo felt something cold settle in his chest. Kalthos stole military bioweapons, not stole, bought, from a Zephyrian general named Kolvash, who needed money to pay gambling debts. The general thought he was selling to another military group that wanted to study alien diseases. He had no idea Kalthos planned to use it to frame humans for mass murder. Why frame humans? What does Kalthos gain from making the Empire hate us more than they already do? Mingy finished her drink and signaled the bartender for another. "War is profitable, Jinwoo. If humans and the Empire go to war, someone has to supply weapons to both sides. Someone has to run supplies through blockades. Someone has to provide intelligence about enemy movements. And Kalthos wants to be that someone. He has been positioning himself for years, building relationships with corrupt officials, blackmailing military officers, placing his people in key positions. Your nephew was just the match he needed to light the fire." The bartender brought Mingy's new drink, a different color this time, green instead of blue. Jinwoo wondered how many different poisons she had built up immunity to over the years. "I need to find the evidence," he said. "Something that proves the weapon came from Zephyrian sources, not human ones. That is going to be difficult. Kalthos is not stupid. He would have destroyed most of the evidence by now. Most of it, not all of it." Mingy smiled, and for a moment she looked like the young woman who had joined Earth intelligence to make the galaxy a better place. "There might be one lead. A smuggler named Hunsu Lee has been moving biotainment equipment through this sector. For the past year, word is, he did not know what he was carrying, but he might have records. Where can I find him?" "Docking Bay 94. But Jinwoo, you need to know something. Kalthos put a bounty on anyone asking questions about the Nexus Station attack. 5 million credits for information leading to their capture. Dead or alive." Jinwoo stood up from the table. "How much for alive?" "Same as dead. Like I said, Kalthos is not stupid." Docking Bay 94 was in the commercial section of the station, where legitimate traders kept their ships between runs. It was cleaner than the lower levels, with better lighting and air that did not taste like recycled sweat and fear. Hyensu, Lee's ship was a mid-size cargo hauler called the Seoul Express. It had seen better decades, with hull plates that did not quite match and engine ports that glowed a little too bright, but it looked spaceworthy, which was more than could be said for half the ships on Terminus Station. Jinwoo found Hyuginsu in the ship's cargo bay, checking inventory on a handheld scanner. The man was in his 60s, with the kind of weathered face that came from spending years in recycled air and artificial light. He had been handsome once, but space had a way of grinding the beauty out of everything. Eventually, "Yuli Jinu?" asked in Korean. Hume. Su looked up from his scanner, surprised to hear his native language. "Depends who is asking. You do not look like customs, but these days you never know. My name is Jinwoo Kim. I am looking for information about some cargo. You moved about 6 months ago. Biocontainment equipment." The change in Hyunsu's expression was immediate. The friendly curiosity vanished, replaced by the careful blankness of someone who had learned to survive by knowing when to run. "I do not know what you are talking about," Hyunsu said, but his hand moved toward the pistol on his belt. "I am not Empire Law," Jinwoo said quickly. "I am not bounty hunters. I am the uncle of the boy they are trying to blame for the Nexus Station attack." Hyunsu's hand stopped moving toward his weapon. "The human scientist. That was your family." "My nephew. He is innocent, and I can prove it if I can find the right evidence." For a long moment, Hyunsu just stared at him. Then he set down his scanner and walked to the cargo bay's main doors. He pressed a button that sealed them shut and activated the privacy shields. "That job nearly got me killed," Hyunsu said. "I thought I was moving medical equipment to a research station. Clean job, good pay, no questions asked. Exactly the kind of work I like." "What went wrong?" "The pickup was wrong from the start. The clients were nervous, jumpy. They kept looking over their shoulders like they expected trouble. The cargo containers were sealed with military-grade locks, not the standard medical seals they had told me about." Hyunsu walked to a wall panel and opened it, revealing a small safe. He entered a code and pulled out a datapad. "I always keep records of my runs, even the questionable ones. Call it insurance against unhappy customers." He handed the pad to Jinwoo. "The cargo manifest, pickup location, delivery coordinates, and payment records. Everything you need to trace where that equipment came from and where it went. Jinwoo scrolled through the information, his expression growing darker with each entry. The pickup location was a Zephyrian military depot. The delivery point was a warehouse owned by one of Kalthos' shell companies. The payment had come from accounts linked to known criminal organizations. This proves the bioweapon came from Zephyrian military sources, Jinwoo said. Why are you giving this to me? Because I have a grandson about the same age as your nephew, Hyunsoo replied, and because I am tired of criminals using honest people like us as tools in their games. Jinwoo copied the data to his own device and handed the pad back. You should leave the station for a while. When this information becomes public, Kalthos is going to want to silence anyone who can connect him to the crime. Already planning on it. Gotta run to the outer rim. That should keep me busy for a few months. Hyunsoo paused. What are you going to do with the information? Whatever it takes to clear my nephew's name and make sure the people responsible pay for what they have done, and if that means war. Jinwoo headed for the cargo bay doors. Then we make sure we win. As he left the docking bay, Jinwoo felt the familiar weight of purpose settling on his shoulders. The hunt was no longer just beginning. It was accelerating toward the kind of confrontation that would either save his nephew or doom them all. Behind him, Hyunsoo began preparing his ship for immediate departure. He had seen that look in men's eyes before. During the war, it was the look of someone who had decided that mercy was a luxury they could no longer afford. The galaxy was about to learn why humans were feared in the darkness between the stars. Korvax 7 was a world that the galaxy had forgotten on purpose. It orbited a dying red star, its surface covered in rocky mountains and poisonous swamps. The only structures on the entire planet were the prison complexes that housed the Empire's worst criminals. Daeyoung Kim sat in his cell, staring at the gray walls that had become his entire universe. For weeks had passed since his sentencing, and each day felt longer than the last. The alien prisoners around him spoke in languages he did not understand, but their hatred needed no translation. At least, that was how it had been in the beginning. Something had changed in the past week. The other prisoners had started treating him differently. Instead of threats and violence, they offered protection. Instead of isolation, they included him in their conversations. Some even tried to teach him words in their languages. It started with a creature called Vok, a massive being with gray skin and 4 arms who had been imprisoned for leading a rebellion against Empire taxation. Vokter spoke broken human standard, learned from traders and diplomats over the years. Small human Vokter had said one morning, during the meal period, "You have powerful family. My family cannot help me here." Daeyoung replied, "They are diplomats, not warriors." Vokter made a sound that might have been laughter. "Not diplomat family, other family, the one who hunts." "I do not understand." Word travels fast in prison. Faster than Empire ships. They say human ghost walks among criminals. They say, he asks, questions about Nexus Station. They say those who answer die, and those who do not answer also die. Daeyoung felt something stir in his chest that he had not felt since the trial. "Hope you know about this hunter." "All criminals know. They call him different names in different languages. But story is always same. Human, who kills without sound, who appears from shadows, who makes Empire soldiers afraid to sleep." Vokter leaned closer. "They say he is family to Rong's scientist." For the first time in weeks, Daeyoung smiled. 500 light-years away, Jinwoo Kim was making those stories come true. He moved through the criminal underworld like a plague, targeting anyone connected to Kalthos' organization. But he was not just killing, he was gathering intelligence, building a map of the crime lord's entire operation. His latest target was a Zephyrian arms dealer named Galactic, who had supplied weapons for the Nexus Station attack. Jinwoo found him in a cantina on the trade world of Velkra, surrounded by bodyguards who thought their numbers made them safe. They were wrong. Jinwoo waited until Galactic went to the cantina's back room for a private meeting. The bodyguards stayed at their table, drinking and making jokes about the weak humans who thought they could threaten Zephyrian business interests. 20 minutes later, Galactic's bodyguards found their boss hanging from the ceiling with a data pad shoved in his mouth. The pad contained a detailed record of his weapons sales to Kalthos, along with a message written in perfect Zephyrian script. "Justice comes for all who harm the innocent. The ghost of Earth remembers every crime." Word of Galactic's death reached Kalthos within hours. The crime lord was in his fortress on the moon, Kethver, reviewing reports from his various operations across the sector. When his lieutenant brought him the news, Kalthos destroyed 3 pieces of expensive furniture before regaining his composure. "This human is becoming a problem," Kalthos said, his translated voice full of cold anger. "How many of our people has he killed now?" 17 confirmed. "Boss, maybe more." He is working his way up the chain, getting closer to the core operations. Kalthos stood and walked to the window of his office. Outside, the barren surface of Kethver stretched toward the horizon. His fortress was built into the side of a mountain, protected by shields, weapons, and the best security money could buy. It should have made him feel safe. Instead, he felt like prey. What do we know about this ghost? Not much. Human, obviously. Military training. Probably special forces. He knows our organization structure better than most of our own people. Family. Connection to the scientist. Has to be. The timing is too perfect for coincidence. Kalthos turned back to his lieutenant. Then we use that connection against him. Contact the prison authorities on Korvax 7. Tell them we have intelligence about a planned rescue attempt. Have them transfer the scientist to a more secure facility. Which facility? The one on Morgok Prime. Maximum security, no outside contact, surrounded by Imperial Navy ships. Kalthos smiled, showing teeth that were too sharp for any civilized species. If this ghost wants his family back, he will have to come through the Empire's best defenses to get him. And if he actually tries it, then we kill him and sell the body to the Empire as proof that humans cannot be trusted with advanced technology. The transfer order came through 3 days later. Daeon was given no warning, no explanation. Guards simply arrived at his cell, shackled him, and dragged him to a transport ship. As they lifted off from Korvax 7, he caught a glimpse of other prisoners in the exercise yard. Vaktor was among them, and the big alien raised one of his 4 hands in what might have been a salute. Daeon did not know where he was being taken, but he understood that the game had changed. His uncle was out there somewhere, hunting the people who had destroyed his life. The Empire was scared enough to move him to a more secure prison. That meant Jinwoo was winning. Meanwhile, on a cargo ship disguised as a medical transport, Choi was making the most dangerous journey of her life. She had been hiding for months, ever since witnessing the real perpetrators of the Nexus Station attack. But when word reached her that someone was finally hunting for the truth, she decided to risk everything. Su Young was a trader who specialized in rare metals and exotic materials. She had been on Nexus Station conducting business when the bio was released. Unlike the other witnesses, she had not panicked. Instead, she had activated her personal recording system and captured everything. The footage showed Kalthos' S agents placing the weapon in the research lab where Daeon worked. It showed them setting up the evidence that would frame the young scientist. Most importantly, it showed the real faces of the killers. But evidence was worthless if no one would listen to it. The Empire had already decided that humans were guilty. The corporate media outlets were too afraid of alien retaliation to report the truth. That left unofficial channels. Su Yang had heard whispers about a human ghost who was dismantling Kalthos' organization piece by piece. If she could find him, if she could give him the proof he needed, maybe justice could finally be served. The problem was finding a ghost who did not want to be found. Su Yang's ship dropped out of hyperspace near Terminus Station. According to her sources, this was where the hunt had begun. If the ghost was anywhere, it would be here, in the shadows between the legitimate trading levels and the criminal underworld. Below. She docked her ship and began the careful process of making contact with information brokers. It was dangerous work. Too many questions could mark her as a target for Kalthos' remaining agents. Too few questions would get her nowhere. But Su Yang had been trading in dangerous markets for 15 years. She knew how to read the subtle signs that indicated someone was listening, even when they pretended not to be. It took her 3 days to make contact with the right person. A former Earth intelligence operative named Minji Park, who seemed to know exactly why Su Yang was there before she even finished her first sentence. "You have proof," Minji said. It was not a question. Video evidence of the real attack. Clear images of the perpetrators, enough to clear the scientist and expose the conspiracy, and you want to give it to the ghost. I want to give it to whoever can use it to stop this madness. Minji studied Su Young's face for a long moment. The ghost does not make social calls. If you want to meet him, you have to be useful to him. Information is useful, proof is useful, but most useful of all is bait. What kind of bait? The kind that draws Kalthos out of his fortress. The kind that makes him angry enough to make mistakes. Su Yang felt a chill run down her spine. You want me to reveal myself publicly? Make myself a target. The ghost is already planning something. Something big. Your evidence could be the key to making sure it works. Minji leaned forward. But you need to understand the risks. Once you do this, there is no going back. Kalthos will want you dead, and the Empire will call you a terrorist. And if I do nothing, then an innocent man dies in prison, and the real killers go free. Su Yang closed her eyes and thought about the young human scientists she had seen. On the news feeds, Daeon Kim had been trying to develop medicines that could help all species live longer, healthier lives. His reward had been false accusations and a life sentence. What do I need to do? Minji smiled. First, we make a very public broadcast of your evidence. Then we sit back and watch Kalthos lose his mind. And when he makes his move, the ghost will be waiting. As the two women began planning their revelation, neither of them noticed the small listening device that had been planted in Minji's usual booth. Kalthos' agents were fewer in number than before, but they were still watching. The trap was about to spring. The question was who would be caught in it. The broadcast went out on every major news network in the galaxy at exactly midnight, Galactic Standard Time. Suyang Choi appeared on screens across 1,000 worlds, her face calm but determined as she presented the evidence that would change everything. "My name is Suyang Choi," she began, speaking in clear, measured tones. "I am a human trader, and I was on Nexus Station when the bioweapon attack occurred. What I am about to show you will prove that Daeon Kim is innocent of all charges." The video footage was devastating. Crystal clear images of Kalthos' agents placing the weapon. Audio recordings of them discussing how to frame the human scientist. Financial records showing payments from Zephyrian military accounts to known criminal organizations. Within hours, the story was everywhere. Independent journalists began investigating the connections. Diplomatic protests flooded Empire communication channels. On a dozen worlds, humans demanded answers from their alien neighbors, but the most important viewer was watching from his fortress on. Kethver Kalthos destroyed his office in a rage that made his earlier tantrums look like minor annoyances. Furniture exploded against walls. Computer screens shattered under the impact of thrown objects. His security staff wisely stayed outside until the storm passed. When the crime lord finally calmed down, he called an emergency meeting of his remaining lieutenants. The inner circle that had once numbered 15 was now down to 5. The human ghost had been thorough in his work. "Find that traitor," Kalthos snarled, his translated voice crackling with electronic distortion. "Find her, kill her, and make it public. I want every human in the galaxy to know what happens to those who interfere with my business." "Boss," said Young Ho Nam, the only human among Kalthos' lieutenants, "maybe we should cut our losses. The evidence is already public. The Empire is going to have to investigate." Kalthos turned his yellow eyes toward the human traitor. Young Ho had been useful for his knowledge of human psychology and culture, but his loyalty had always been questionable. "Are you suggesting we surrender, Young Ho?" "I am suggesting we disappear for a while. Let the heat die down. Come back when people have forgotten about this." "People do not forget when they are given proof that they have been lied to," Kalthos replied. "The only way to fix this is to eliminate all the evidence and all the witnesses, including the scientist, especially the scientist, and his ghost uncle, whoever he is." What Kalthos did not know was that his ghost uncle was already inside the fortress. Jinwoo Kim had been planning this infiltration for weeks, ever since learning about Daeon's transfer to Morgok Prime. The fortress on Kethver was supposed to be impregnable, protected by energy shields, automated defenses, and a small army of guards. But every fortress had weaknesses. Every security system had blind spots. And every army was only as strong as the people who made it up. Jinwoo had entered the fortress through the waste processing system, a route that no sane person would attempt. The toxic chemicals used to break down organic waste would kill most species within minutes. But humans had always been remarkably good at surviving in environments that should have been lethal. Now he moved through the maintenance tunnels like a predator stalking prey. His target was not just Kalthos, it was the complete destruction of the crime lord's organization and everything he had built. The first security checkpoint fell without an alarm being raised. The guards simply stopped responding to radio calls. Their replacements found empty posts and no sign of what had happened to the previous shift. The second checkpoint lasted longer. The guards had time to realize something was wrong before the lights went out. When emergency power restored illumination 30 seconds later, they found messages written on the walls in their own blood. "Justice comes for those who harm the innocent." By the time the third checkpoint went silent, panic was spreading through the fortress. Kalthos ordered a full security sweep, but his guards were afraid to venture into the dark areas where their colleagues had vanished. Jinwoo used their fear against them. He appeared in shadows, struck without warning, and vanished before reinforcements could arrive. Each attack was precisely calculated to create maximum psychological impact while advancing him closer to his target. The fortress's communication system was his next objective. From a maintenance terminal, Jinwoo uploaded a virus that gave him control over the entire network. Suddenly, every screen in the building displayed the same message. "Kalthos, I am coming for you. Surrender now, and I will make your death quick." The crime lord watched the message appear on his office screen and felt something he had not experienced in decades. Fear. "Seal the command level," he ordered. "Full lockdown. Nothing gets in or out." Energy barriers slammed down across every entrance to the upper floors. Automated weapons systems came online, their sensors programmed to fire at anything that moved. The command level became a fortress within a fortress. But Jinwoo had not survived 15 years as Earth's deadliest operative by taking the obvious routes. He came through the air conditioning system. The first Kalthos knew of his presence was when Young Ho Nam's body crashed through the office window. The human traitor had been interrogating prisoners in the level below. Now he hung upside down outside the window, very clearly dead. "Guards," Kalthos screamed into his communicator. "Intruder on the command level." No response came. The communicator was working perfectly, but there was no one left to answer. The office door exploded inward in a shower of sparks and metal. Through the smoke stepped a figure in black tactical gear. carrying weapons that Kalthos did not recognize. The human's face was hidden behind a mask, but his eyes were visible through the visor. They were the coldest eyes Kalthos had ever seen. "You know why I am here," Jinwoo said, his voice electronically modulated to remove any trace of humanity. "Want the scientist? I can arrange his release. Full pardon, transportation back to Earth, compensation for his suffering. Too late for deals." Kalthos backed toward his desk, where a hidden weapon waited. "What do you want? Money? Territory? I can make you rich beyond your wildest dreams. I want justice." The crime lord's hand found the weapon and brought it up. In one smooth motion, it was a plasma rifle designed to punch through military armor. At this range, it should have vaporized the human instantly. Jinwoo moved like water, flowing aside as the energy beam scorched the air where he had been standing. His own weapon came up, and suddenly Kalthos found himself staring down the barrel of something that looked like it had been built specifically to kill his species. "You framed an innocent man," Jinwoo said. "You murdered civilians to start a war. You corrupted the justice system for profit." "I was just business," Kalthos gasped. "Nothing personal." "Everything is personal when you hurt family." Jinwoo reached into his tactical vest and pulled out a small device. It looked like a medical injector, but Kalthos recognized it immediately. It was a bioweapon delivery system, identical to the ones used in the Nexus Station attack. "This contains a sample of your own weapon," Jinwoo explained. "The same poison you used to murder innocent people. The same poison you tried to blame on my nephew." "Wait," Kalthos said, true desperation entering his voice for the first time. "You cannot do this. I have information. Secret deals with Empire officials, corruption that goes all the way to the top. I already have that information. I took it from your computer systems before I came up here." Jinwoo activated the injector and tossed it onto the desk between them. "You have approximately 10 minutes before the weapon takes effect. I suggest you use that time to think about the people you killed. This is murder. This is justice." Jinwoo turned and walked toward the shattered door. Behind him, Kalthos screamed threats and promises, but the human did not look back. As he reached the corridor, Jinwoo activated a final program he had uploaded to the Fortress computer system. Every file, every record, every piece of evidence about Kalthos' criminal organization was transmitted simultaneously to news networks, government agencies, and law enforcement bodies across the galaxy. The truth about the Nexus Station attack, the conspiracy to frame Daeon Kim, and the corruption of Empire officials would be impossible to suppress now. Jinwoo made his way back through the fortress, past the bodies of guards and the wreckage of security systems. At the main entrance, he paused to plant one final device. The explosion that destroyed Kalthos' fortress could be seen from orbit. But by the time rescue ships arrived, there was nothing left to rescue. The ghost of Earth had vanished back into the darkness between the stars, leaving only a message carved into the moon's surface in letters large enough to be seen from space. "Humans protect their own." The political earthquake that followed Yang Choi's broadcast and the destruction of Kalthos' fortress shook the foundations of the Galactic Empire. Within days, protests erupted on every world with a significant human population. Diplomatic channels buzzed with demands for justice and apologies. The Empire's response was swift and decisive. They had no choice. Emperor Vashkal himself appeared on the galactic news networks, his ancient face grave as he addressed the crisis. The massive Vorthok ruler rarely made public statements, preferring to rule from the shadows of the imperial palace. "Citizens of the Empire," he began, his translated voice carrying the weight of absolute authority, "we have discovered evidence of a grave injustice. The human, known as Daeon Kim, was wrongfully convicted based on fabricated evidence. We hereby order his immediate release and full pardon." The announcement was followed by a series of arrests that sent shockwaves through the Empire's power structure. Prosecutor Vextol was stripped of his position and charged with conspiracy. The judge who had sentenced Daeon was removed from office. A dozen high-ranking officials found themselves facing the same courts they had used to persecute innocent beings. But the most significant change was in how the Empire treated its human citizens. Ambassador Hana Kim stood in the same courtroom, where her son had been condemned 6 months earlier. But today, she was not watching a trial. She was witnessing a formal ceremony of apology. Daeon sat in the place of honor, no longer wearing prison clothes but dressed in the formal robes of a recognized scientist. He had lost weight during his imprisonment, and there were new lines around his eyes, but he was alive and free. The new chief prosecutor, a reform-minded Zephyrian named Telvac, read the formal statement of exoneration. "The Empire acknowledges that Daeon Kim was innocent of all charges. We acknowledge that our justice system failed in its most basic duty to seek truth. We pledge that such failures will never happen again." Hannah felt tears running down her cheeks as she watched her son stand to accept the Empire's apology. But her tears were not entirely from joy. The cost of this victory had been enormous. Jinwoo had disappeared after destroying Kalthos' fortress. No one had seen or heard from him in the weeks that followed. Hannah suspected he was alive, somewhere in the darkness between stars, but she might never see her brother again. The price of justice had been the loss of family. After the ceremony, Hannah and Dae-yoon walked through the capital city of Centauri Prime. The alien citizens who had once looked at them with suspicion or hatred now stepped aside respectfully. Some even bowed as they passed. "It feels strange," Dae-yoon said as they paused outside a cafe where Zephyrian musicians played soft melodies. "Being free again, being treated like a person instead of a criminal. The galaxy has learned to respect humans," Hannah replied. "Your uncle made sure of that." "Do you think he is alive?" "I think Jinwoo Kim is the kind of man who dies only when he chooses to. Until then, he will be out there somewhere, making sure no one forgets what happens when they threaten our people." They continued walking until they reached the spaceport. Dae-yoon's ship was waiting, fueled and ready for the journey back to Earth. But before they could board, a familiar figure approached them through the crowd. Soo-young Choi looked different from the woman who had made the galaxy-changing broadcast months earlier. She moved with more confidence now, no longer hiding in shadows or fearing for her life. The Empire had granted her full protection and citizenship on any world she chose. "Dr. Kim," she said, extending her hand to Dae-yoon, "I wanted to apologize for not coming forward sooner. I was afraid." "You saved my life," Dae-yoon replied, taking her hand. "There is nothing to apologize for. I also wanted to give you this." Soo-yang handed him a small data chip. "It contains everything I recorded on Nexus Station. Not just the attack, but your research. Your work on using alien plant life to create new medicines. The Empire destroyed your laboratory, but they could not destroy the knowledge." Dae-yoon stared at the chip with wonder. He had thought his years of research were lost forever. "Why?" he asked. "Because the galaxy needs healers more than it needs warriors. Your uncle made sure the criminals paid for their crimes. Now it is your job to make sure something good comes from all this suffering." As Soo-yang walked away, Hannah and Dae-yoon boarded their ship for the journey home. But they were not the only ones returning to Earth that day. On a transport ship in another part of the spaceport, a young diplomat named Kung Soo-han was preparing for his first assignment. He had been selected to serve as Earth's new ambassador to the Rigel sector, a position that had been vacant since the previous ambassador was killed in a suspicious accident. Kung Soo was nervous about the posting. The Rigel sector was known for its hostile alien populations and corrupt local governments. It was the kind of place where human diplomats had traditionally been treated with contempt, or worse. But as his ship lifted off from Centauri Prime, Kung Soo carried with him something that no human diplomat had possessed before: respect. The story of Jinwoo Kim's hunt for justice had spread throughout the galaxy. Criminal organizations whispered about the human ghost who could appear anywhere, strike without warning, and vanish without a trace. Government officials spoke nervously about the consequences of mistreating human citizens. Most importantly, the message had been received by every species in the Empire. Humans were not just scientists, diplomats, and traitors. They were family, and family protected family with a ferocity that made even the most warlike species think twice. When Kung Soo's ship arrived at Rigel Station 3 days later, he was greeted by a delegation of local officials who treated him with unprecedented courtesy. They offered him the finest quarters on the station, assigned him a full security detail, and promised complete cooperation with any requests he might make. As Kung Soo settled into his new office, he found a message waiting on his private communication terminal. It had no sender identification, no origin data, and no security flags. It was simply there, as if it had appeared by magic. The message was short and written in perfect Korean. "Remember who you represent. Remember who stands behind. Remember that justice has a long reach and a longer memory. Stay safe, young diplomat. Your family is watching." Kung Soo read the message twice, then deleted it as instructed. But he kept the words in his heart as he began his work. Meanwhile, on Earth, Dae-yoon Kim returned to his laboratory with new purpose. The research he had thought lost forever was intact, and he had more support than ever before. The Earth government had provided unlimited funding for his medical research. Universities across the galaxy were requesting copies of his work. Even former enemies were asking for his help developing treatments for diseases that affected their species. But the most important support came from an unexpected source. Tor, the four-armed rebel who had protected Dae-yoon in prison, had been released as part of the Empire's general amnesty for political prisoners. He arrived on Earth with a proposal that would change everything. "Small, human," Tor said in his improving human standard, "my people suffer from plague that your medicines might cure. In return, we offer protection for human scientists working in dangerous parts of galaxy." It was the beginning of an alliance that would grow to include dozens of species. Former criminals and political prisoners who had learned to respect human determination. Alien scientists who wanted to work with the species that had produced healers and avengers in equal measure. The galaxy was changing, one world at a time. Years Later, when historians tried to understand how the balance of power had shifted so dramatically, they would point to the trial of Dae-Yin Kim as the turning point. A moment when one species decided that justice was worth any price and proved that even the mightiest empires could be held accountable for their crimes. But for those who lived through it, the lesson was simpler. Humans were family. And family took care of family, no matter how dark the galaxy became or how far they had to reach for justice. In the shadows between the stars, a ghost still moved through the darkness, watching, waiting, making sure that the lesson was never forgotten. Because some things were worth protecting, no matter what the cost, and some family bonds were stronger than empires.